Welcome back to the Solid Verbal Boys and Girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrand, that fine gentleman over there, the one, the only, always the incomparable Dan Rubenstein, sir. Welcome back. How was your weekend?
Good. I think we had a little bit of a miscommunication when we were talking about this episode, Ty. And I want to apologize up front, just because you're going to see the description of this episode and it's going to make sense given world events. But I think I misprepared for this episode, and I just want to get out ahead of that, if that's okay with you.
You misprepared.
I misprepared. I just looked up something, and I think I just realized that when you said you wanted to do an Eclipse-themed show, I did all my research on the rapper Eclipse, and apparently that has nothing to do with the conversation we're going to have.
That is slightly different, Dan.
So all of the grinding research I did is for naught, and that will have to be a special Patreon Thursday episode when we deep dive comparing college football conference strengths and potential up-and-comers to the rapper Eclipse. And for that, I apologize.
Okay, well, look, nobody's perfect.
No, I really duffed it. Hey, sorry for the quick interruption, but it'd be incredible if you considered subscribing to the Solid Verbal YouTube channel right down below.
We love you like a brother here on the show. We're going to do our best to power on through this. Yeah, we're recording this on Monday, April the 8th, and there's big old eclipse going on. You've got about 93% coverage that you're going to see out in your parts in the Midwest. I've got about a lowly 91.2 or 3 over here in Eastern Pennsylvania. In any case, we'll be done recording this episode in time to witness the natural events outside, the wonder that is a solar eclipse that everyone's talking about today. And we figured, why not theme a college football podcast episode around that, because that is the goofiness that we put forth into this here universe. So thank you for downloading, for listening, for playing along at home. Of course, verballers.com is where you can go to find our Patreon. Dan, just to remind the fine verballers out there, what is the one thing, the most important thing that they can do to support what we are doing this offseason? Really the whole year throughout, but in particular this offseason. What is that one thing?
Slowly shadow you, collect stray bits of your hair, create a doll out of your hair.
We're not doing the smell. We're not doing the smell ties hair thing again. All right. It took me a year and a half to get past that. We're not doing it again.
Quick second apology. Eclipse is a duo of rappers, which I think I said it was a singular rapper. My apologies to Pusha T specifically. Subscribe to the show. Follow the show. Let's get intimate in terms of our college football podcast listening and speaking together.
Wherever you are listening to this, hit the follow button.
Yeah.
Some apps say follow, some say subscribe. Whatever yours says, hit that button for us. It only helps us here in the off season in more ways than we could ever put into words.
Agree.
Okay. So listen, go back and listen to old episodes that we've been doing over the last couple of weeks. We had the grievances bracket. We had Michael Felder on last week. We've been putting out some fun stuff here that I think you and I are both quite proud of. Being so, the eclipse is in a couple hours from now. We are looking at conferences, Dan. We are looking at conferences. We are looking at the stars of particular conferences. We are looking at which teams, if any, could block those teams out and what it means to the conference scape as a whole if that situation occurs, right?
Yes, that is correct. I assume you don't have a lot of thoughts on NC State's spring game from this past weekend.
Not particularly.
The Cam Coleman emergence at Auburn, along with, I guess, the introduction of DJ Durkin. Hooray, Auburn. What a cool decision you made. And by the way, Grayson McCall was pretty good in the spring game. As far as what I could gather, he and Noah Rogers, little Hollywood Smothers, transfer from Oklahoma action. Yeah, we had NC State, Clemson, Chris Vizina, perhaps pushing Cade Klubnik, club level, getting a little full.
Yeah.
It does feel, and we're getting to Eclipse, feel...
Can we do some sort of like club level versus the mezzanina?
That's not bad, Ty. You've struggled in years past, but this is a nice little connection you're making.
This is a nice little bit of connective tissue.
The Vizina mezzanina?
Yeah, that's right.
Real tough, but it really scratches me where I itch, Ty. Yeah, so I think those were early spring games, and hopefully if you're a fan of one of those schools, you saw encouraging things from those spring games. But
and
today,
we will do spring game recaps.
We'll do a wrap
and the like. We'll do a lot more on that, I promise you. But this was just low hanging fruit today. We can't, especially on this show. If you've been listening to this show for any amount of time, we do not miss opportunities like this that are teed up by Mother Nature.
Correct. We celebrate. We have an on-staff, unofficial meteorologist during the season.
That's right.
So we celebrate all things events that have to do with the solar system and or weather, and we are pro everything Eclipse. So yeah, I think the gist of it is, as we begin this, we are going to talk about where the big shine and energy comes from in each conference, specifically the major conferences, but I think we can take a look otherwise as well. And then where the obvious candidates are to block out that light, that winning light, and then perhaps the emerging moons. Earth has but one moon, but it's a powerful moon, as we know, helps to control the tides.
Maybe we'll find more. You block out out one, maybe we'll find out more. So let's start it. Let's talk about like the Big Ten.
Let's talk Big Ten.
So the Big Ten, I don't know who we want to single out here as the star. I mean, Ohio State is the obvious one, given how they have loaded up, but we need to keep in mind that the conference is expanding. Oregon is coming in from the West, as are, of course, Washington and UCLA and USC. But I think when we talk about the Big Ten, at least when we have here in the offseason, the two kind of, I don't know, warring factions, let's say, it's not Ohio State and Michigan.
Right.
It's Ohio State and Oregon. For all intents and purposes, it's the two teams that we look at and we say they're going to be probably front of the class, at least to start, with respect to how they finish off here in the Big Ten in 2024.
Yeah.
If we're talking about obvious candidates that are going to block out the shine of Ohio
first
State.
of all, we should be clear. We should put some respect on Michigan's name, because they were the moon. They were the black hole that swallowed up the sun. I don't know my space that well, Ty. So
this is not working. No.
What is it? Is it a supernova? A nova when a star explodes?
That's right. Supernova.
So I don't know if we saw a Michigan supernova that fully blew up Ohio State these past couple years, because Michigan ends up winning the national championship. So I don't know. When you have a team that is a defending national champion, I think they deserve some consideration here. Even if we were looking at Michigan moving forward with a bit of a bigger question mark without Jim Harbaugh, and given what Michigan loses on that roster on both sides, I understand where you're coming from, that Ohio State, if you look at the past dozen years or so, the clear son of the Big Ten.
I think
we just saw a Michigan eclipse. That's all I'm saying.
I think that's fair. Michigan just loses a lot. There's a lot coming back. But they're losing. They're losing J.J. McCarthy, losing Mike Corum, losing your coach. I mean, it's just a lot. It's a lot to try and replace that, and especially with a new /old guy in charge, and Sharon Moore. Like, I have faith that Michigan's going to be fine. I don't think it's like the bottom is going to fall out, but it's really tough. It's been historically very tough to rebound from that type of loss, that type of turnover. So
I just think it's fair in this instance, and you know more about this world than I do. We could have our guy John on, right? From what's the name? The
Keck Observatory.
The Keck Observatory. Thank you. There are universes, there are solar systems out there with multiple suns, I assume.
A binary
multiple,
system.
Like bright stars.
Binary system, yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying for the Big Ten right now is it's a binary system. Like, I don't know how you consider one school to be the obvious star when another school literally 3 months ago won the national championship. So I would split that sun down the middle in this instance.
If we are blocking out the shine of Ohio State and Oregon.
Yeah. Or Ohio State and Michigan to me, but yes, continue.
Or Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah.
If we are blocking out that shine, who is doing it? What does the rest of the conference look like?
Right.
Behind those teams, because this is what we're going to find when the solar eclipse happens. There are studies that take place. Listen to the soundscape of the nature as sudden onset darkness appears in the natural habitat. You start hearing crickets. You
You're describing animals. The back half of USC's 2023 sudden onset darkness. Continue.
see things start to happen in nature that only typically happen at night. So
Right.
the landscape changes once the natural light from the sun suddenly goes away.
Mm-hmm.
If we remove Ohio State, if we remove Oregon, can remove a little bit of Michigan. What
Sure.
what does the rest of the Big Ten look like to you in that instance?
So you're talking about a vacuum. The obvious conversation at that point, because of recruiting, because of recent success, is Penn State. That Penn State would help fill that gravitational void. Moon has something to do with gravity, right? Keeps the Earth honest, keeps the tides flowing.
Did you not have science?
I did have science, Ty, but most of the Pythagorean theorem, most of the genus, phylum, species, most of I do remember that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Most of that has been replaced by dough fermentation.
I think the moon has something to do with gravity.
Yeah, the moon
says
keeps
the guy
Earth honest.
who lived next to the ocean and is probably familiar with tides.
The tides,
Continue.
yes, which is a nice little tie-in to college football, talking about the tide. Yes, the moon and its gravitational pull on Earth keep the tides regular, high and low tides in oceans, and I think somewhat in lakes, but not as pronounced. What I'm going to say is Penn State fills that void rather easily when you look at on-field success and recruiting. But I'm going to give you a dark horse because certainly we've seen the highs of Lincoln Riley's offense. We have no idea what to expect from UCLA. Washington is at least interesting, but we don't have a concept, I think, at this moment of Washington and carrying over success. I think Washington would be an interesting candidate because I think Jed Fish will be able to recruit. It's a great home environment, and given recent success, Washington has to be in that conversation. I'll give you an interesting one, though. I'm very curious about the Eclipse capabilities of the Spartans of Michigan State.
Aiden Childs?
Whether short-term Aiden Childs, I just think Jonathan Smith is a really good coach. I think you can find line talent in the Midwest. Jonathan Smith has done a very nice job hiring in his short time. His own pedigree as a Chris Peterson guy is very impressive. You like to see that. And there is something about, and I don't think Matt Ishbia is around in terms of NIL anymore after he bought the Suns. So they don't have that specific benefactor that would help on the NIL front, at least whatever short, medium term. Yeah. But if the money's there at Michigan State, I know there's other, big money guys there, and the transfer destination element with Jonathan Smith is there, and I really like the hires that Jonathan Smith brought to East Lansing in this moment. I'm not telling you I'm high on Michigan State this year, but if you're telling me who could be that gravitational fly in the solar ointment, Ty, I don't know. I can be swayed. I can be pulled, not unlike how the moon pulls the tides.
Okay.
I can be pulled in the direction of Michigan State as an interesting dark horse moon here.
What about the Iowa Hawkeyes?
You're talking about longer term? No.
I'm talking about shorter term. I'm talking about right away in 2024. If there's a situation where the obvious shine of Ohio State and Oregon and Michigan is blotted out for whatever reason. I don't know what Mother Nature has in store for us this Big Ten season.
But over Penn State?
Well, they don't play Penn State.
No, but I'm saying just in general. Do you think Iowa's in a better position to fill that void than Penn State?
Probably not.
Okay.
But if we're talking about dark horses, the reason I bring up Iowa is because Iowa's actually got a fair amount back. They lose a fair amount, but they've got a fair amount back on offense in particular. Now, a lot of scuttlebutt here in the offseason about what's Iowa's offense going to look like. They hire a guy. It was
Jim Lester, yeah.
Not necessarily the sexiest hire in the world. It was somebody with whom Kirk Ferentz was familiar. So I don't have any grand aspirations for this offense this season, going above and beyond. But they did have an injury to Cade McNamara last year, which certainly set the offense back. Say what you want about the way that Kirk Ferentz has called offense over his time in Iowa, specifically the last 10 years or so.
Right.
But it hurts when your starting quarterback goes down. You don't have a ton of depth behind him. And so they get him back. They're up there in the nation. I don't have the number in front of me. I think they're 30th nationally in terms of returning production. They're inside the top 15 returning production on offense. There's a lot back that they can work with. I don't have grand aspirations, again, for what that's going to look like, but I am curious to see if a change in leadership on the offensive side of the ball can give them a little bit more pop. We have come to know that defensively,
it has to, Ty. It
has to, right? It can't be any worse.
If Cade McNamara is healthy, if Cade McNamara is healthy, the offensive line takes another step forward, and they're successful enough developing skill talent. There's promising guys at running back from last year back. Like there's something there that should say, especially if you remove Ohio State from the schedule. I don't know if you have the schedule in front of you.
I have it in front of me. So, and this is why it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen to the teams on this schedule.
Yeah.
And tell me how many of these on the surface you feel like are losses, right? Iowa State. Iowa State's got a lot back. So that'll be a tough game, rivalry game, who knows? But it's in Kinnick Stadium. Troy Trojans and Jared Parker at Minnesota. Bye week before Ohio State, first week of October. That will have big Eclipse ramifications.
We'll remove that from the schedule.
Move that out
in this Eclipse conversation. Yeah.
Washington, without Michael Penix, at home in Iowa City. At Michigan State kind of rebuilding now. Home against Northwestern, home against Wisconsin, on the road at UCLA, on the road at Maryland. They close out the season at home against Nebraska. How many of those teams scare you?
2?
Yeah, not many. Not many.
On the road at Minnesota, coming off of a 12-10 loss to Minnesota. On the road, Michigan State. We'll see what Michigan State looks like in mid-October. UCLA starting over is on the road. At Maryland's kind of scary. We'll see what they look like at quarterback this year. But no, that is, if you're talking about 11 games, it's 9 or 10 wins. If they take an acceptable step forward to
it's got to be
on offense. Yeah.
It's got to be acceptable on offense, but the defense has been one of the mainstays really throughout college football.
Yeah.
For the last decade. I mean, the offense is always kind of a struggle bus. The defense has certainly served up its part and kept Iowa very relevant.
And they now have plenty of time. They have plenty of time to look up how to signal or not signal what on punt returns, right?
Correct.
So they can work on that all off season long. So that's helpful.
All off season long. I just think we have gone so far down this rabbit hole with Iowa and the offense, and the jokes are funny, and it seems like they're limitless, and we enjoy them here.
I think the jokes are. Continue.
I love them. Okay,
I'm not going to be a joke goalie here, Ty, so I'm going to pull back.
I speak for myself on this one. I am pro every Iowa offense joke.
Okay.
But that being said, if you do pull back and if you look at what the landscape looks like around him here, the schedule is going to continue to get harder in the years to come. And I think that's when the rubber's going to meet the road. But here in the short term, given some of the uncertainty around the conference and some of the turnover that's going on around them, you blot out Ohio State. It's like, okay, this is still Iowa with its defense, and they're going to take some of these teams to the wire.
Also, Iowa has beaten Ohio State not terribly long ago. So even if Ohio State were on the schedule.
Before we move on and talk about a different conference,
do you have like a dark? So is Iowa your dark horse, or is that like your legit moon for the Big Ten?
I think I probably will put Iowa more in the dark horse category.
Okay.
Just because it feels to me like they've been written off by a lot of folks, if only because of that offense. Okay. We really don't know what that's going to look like this year. We can make assumptions, but
I think it's disrespectful we didn't include Wisconsin in this conversation.
Well, I was going to ask you about Wisconsin. I was actually going to ask you about Michigan if we could talk a little bit more about them.
Okay.
But the Wisconsin thing is interesting. We have talked about the Badgers before. We both have a ton of respect for Luke Fickell. The problem that I have with Wisconsin, specifically with respect to the 2024 season, is the schedule's kind of brutal.
Yeah.
The schedule's tough. And, to assume that they're a dark horse in this landscape with all of this ammo in the schedule, to me, is a bit of a stretch.
I think that's fair. I think I'm thinking about this more big picture, long term. That could Wisconsin ascend in a universe in which Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, whoever you want to say, are you a believer enough in Luke Fickell, roster building, continuity, coach hires, to say I think Wisconsin could build something that could even with those schools existing as they do right now, that all those places are in very positive places, more so than Wisconsin, arguably, that Wisconsin could ascend to a point where you're just like, they're so much of a pain in the ass. They look like where they were in like the late 2010s, that they're fielding a top 5 defense, which is not out of the question with Luke Fickell, and recruit to a very specific vision on offense, and are just such a pain that they're winning 10 games even in a loaded Big Ten. I'm asking you like what your belief, like I need to see what they look like at quarterback post TVD.
Yeah.
Because I'm not there right now with TVD.
Yeah, I mean there's almost two ways to look at this, right? Part of it is longer term, the other part is in the short term.
Yeah.
And bigger picture, yeah, we have a lot of respect for Luke Fickell and what he brings to the table, and how his track record can inform us as for what's to come for Wisconsin. I think all of that's very exciting. I almost can't get past this season though. And the TVD experiment to me is supremely interesting. It's on my top 25 list of most interesting off-season / early season storylines that I want to follow. What does TVD look like in this system? Because we know the highs of TVD can be pretty good. We've also seen the lows, and those have been a little bit more dramatic, and injury ridden, and turnover prone. And if we can get past that, then the schedule's brutal, but at the same time, you trust the coach. The talent otherwise is pretty decent. It stands to reason that Wisconsin could be ready to take a step forward in some respect.
They're like a shady horse to me. They're not quite a dark horse. They're not quite an obvious horse. They're a dusky horse.
Horse.
Yeah, they like you have to believe a little bit more than what you can see with your eyes in this moment because of where the offense or where we think the offense could ascend to. But right now, with the injuries at quarterback they had last year, with the way they use certain guys on offense, like you have to believe more than you can see right now. I'm a believer. But right now, I think I give Jonathan Smith and Michigan State a slightly more intriguing edge longer term because of his history with quarterbacks and talent and coaches. I think I'm slightly there.
I want to move to a different conference.
Please.
I want to talk real quick about Michigan though.
Okay.
Just a quick 30-second
Please.
bit. The thing with Michigan is this. You cannot go 3 weeks at a pop with this schedule without running into, without running into a buzzsaw of some sort, without playing a tough game of some sort. Open the year, Fresno State, Texas, games at home, but Texas and Arkansas State. First grouping of 3. Next grouping of 3 after that, home against USC, home against Minnesota, on the road at Husky Stadium. That might be the easiest stretch of 3 weeks. Okay.
I hear you.
After a bye week, at Illinois, home against Michigan State, rivalry, home against Oregon. That won't be easy.
Tough. Yeah.
Close out the year at Indiana, new look Indiana, Kurt Signetti, home against Northwestern, on the road at Ohio State. There aren't a whole lot of breaks here for a new coach. I think we like the talent on hand. Again, there's plenty coming back, even though there's plenty walking out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Hard for me to see a situation in which they are the star of the conference this year. It could happen, but it's hard for me to see.
That was
given
great.
The schedule,
that was an all-time hedge, by the way, from you. That was a fine moment of hedging. All-time hedging history.
Okay, I won't hedge. I don't see it.
You said it could happen, but I don't see it.
Well,
so
your
your bases are covered.
My bases are covered. I don't see it.
Okay.
I don't see Michigan against this schedule with everything that just left going on the kind of run like they've had the last 3 years with the new coach. I just don't see it. Prove me wrong. I'm not picking them as my national champion this year. I'm just not.
What's the scene? What's the line in Breaking Bad where Skylar is like, they're coming after you. They're doing all this. Aren't you scared of this? Aren't you scared of that? And he says, I am the one who knocks. Right?
Yeah.
And the counterpoint is Michigan just comfortably beat the team who beat Texas in the playoff, and now they get Texas. Now these are all different rosters. These are all, every season has its own different context. But if Michigan plays to what we already know is Sharon Moore's very specific vision for this team, it's carrying over from the Harbaugh era. I don't think you're going to see a lot different on offense, and there's enough back on defense. You look at the secondary, you look at the defensive line. There's just enough pieces who played significantly for a championship team.
Yeah.
That, I don't know. I think you should be a little bit more scared if you're playing Michigan than if you're looking at Michigan's schedule.
I'm not saying they're a pushover, Dan.
They're not no, I know.
They're not,
what I'm
not
saying
a pushover,
is,
but I'm just saying I'm not expecting an undefeated season.
I know, but I think they can still go 10-2 against the schedule.
No,
That's what I'm saying.
No.
There is something about, what's the fun phrase? Like championship DNA, right? That there is something in Ann Arbor that should scare the bejesus out of every team on their schedule, right? Michigan is squarely living rent-free in Ohio State's head, right? Ohio State's out there spending $400 million to keep the roster intact and bring in new guys on the roster. As is their right, as is great to see if you're an Ohio State fan that your team is doing everything they can. But they're doing it because they've been pushed around a lot recently by this Michigan program. Different players, different offensive linemen, different guys in the secondary. That there has been something about inside this Michigan program that has them better prepared to win that game every year. Where's the Texas game?
Texas game's at home.
Texas game's at home. It's in Ann Arbor. That's pretty nice. Pretty nice. Where's the Oregon game?
Oregon game's at home.
Oregon game's at home. Where's the Ohio State game?
Ohio State game is in the shoe.
Have they recently won in the shoe?
As luck would have it, they have, yeah.
Okay. So all I'm saying right now, and you're our chief hedging officer, so I understand where you're coming from. But I think the counterpoint is pretty strong for Michigan in this moment, that they are more feared than we should be scared of what's on their schedule. That's all.
Yeah. Michigan blotted out Ohio State.
Yeah.
Via the own version of the Eclipse. And now we're almost talking about it in reverse a little bit, because they have owned Ohio State. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. I don't know.
Different elements, different ways. Yeah.
I'm not as high on Michigan this year. I don't see how.
I don't know officially where I stand.
Michigan. Yeah,
I'm just
we have
saying,
not done the full preseason deep dive and all that. I'm not as high on Michigan this year as I was last year. I don't see how anybody could be.
Totally.
I think if you are as high on Michigan this year as you were last year, you are living in an alternate reality.
You're a Michigan fan. Yeah.
You're a Michigan fan.
Yeah, that's okay.
Many of whom have commented on our videos and emailed in about how disrespectful I was towards Michigan.
True.
Keep it coming. I don't care. I can't get as high about Michigan as I was last season, but they're still going to be very good. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go next? Which conference?
You want to go to the Mountain West?
Yeah. Great. Lay it on me.
Fastball, screwball, curveball, whatever you have. Who's the star in the Mountain West? Who is that bright shining orb in the middle of the Mountain West in this moment?
In the middle of the Mountain West.
Yeah.
My default
Or does
answer,
one exist?
My default answers are always either Boise State or Fresno State.
What about Oregon State 2026? That was mean. I'm sorry.
That was mean.
Yeah.
Those are always my default answers. Is there a better answer for the Mountain West?
Then Boise?
Boise or Fresno?
Boise, Fresno, San Diego State, Air Force. I don't think there's an obvious star here. But is there a team? Is there a team on this? Obviously, Wyoming makes a coaching change. UNLV is interesting to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if Barry Odom is long for Vegas.
Lost Jaden Mayava.
Lost Jaden Mayava to USC. Proximity to recruiting. Vegas has become more and more of a sports town with the addition of the NHL team, an NFL team, and at some point a Sacramento team moving from MLB's Oakland A's to Sacramento A's to the Vegas A's, allegedly. I don't know. There's something about UNLV. I don't know what they have behind the scenes in terms of NIL, if Guy Fieri is going to be a big booster as Barry Odom ramps it up. UNLV is interesting to me as a moon to what they made the conference championship game last year.
That's right.
They weren't great in it.
No.
But Boise with a new full-time head coach, San Diego State, new head coach. There's a lot that's pretty open. Tedford seems to be near the end of his tenure at Fresno. I don't think you can count them out. I think UNLV is the obvious son here to blot out the energy of the recent powers in the Mountain West. For as long as Barry Odom is there.
First off, continuing science lesson for you.
Please.
It is the moon that blots out the sun. And
what did I say?
You said that they were the obvious sun. That
was excuse me. They could ascend to obvious sun, but right now they're the obvious moon to blot out the sun. Correct.
I think I tend to favor Fresno by a nose if we're talking about sort of the star of the conference.
Okay.
And if you look at it just in terms of who's coming back,
Jake Haener ain't walking through that door, Ty.
Jake Haener ain't walking through that door, but they've got a lot back on offense.
Yeah.
And they're almost kind of a 180 as compared to Boise State, which has a lot coming back on the new coach, new situation, but a lot coming back on the defensive side of the ball. So in that sense, it'll be interesting to watch how the Mountain West season plays out, where you've got offense on one side, maybe defense on the other, if those are the two teams that we end up talking the most about. UNLV is interesting to me. I tend to agree, and that was sort of where I went first when you mentioned who is interesting, because it does feel like that program has seen a bit of a jolt lately. I'm interested in Colorado State. Colorado State wasn't all that good, but they're another team that has a fair amount back on both sides of the ball. I still like Jay Norvell a lot as their coach. I think it's going to be a slow build to kind of get them back to respectability. So it's probably a bridge too far at this point to assume that they're going to be the team that like finds some way to blot out the stars. But I kind of have one eye on Colorado State just to see if not them rising to that level, just to see how that program grows under Jay Norvell.
Fair enough. Okay. Let's go to America's Conference, and that would be the only conference that features the eucalyptus trees of Palo Alto and the palm trees of Coral Gables.
The All-American Conference, yeah. ACC.
America's Conference.
Who is the star of the ACC?
The bright shining star right now is Florida State. Because I'm just going to give benefits of the doubt. I'm not going to sweat what they lose. I'm still going to doubt that they can accomplish big things with DJU. But based solely on recent growth, recent ascension, the way that they played at their best last year, last couple years, what Mike Norvell has done in the portal, what he's done on the recruiting trail, somewhat to the disappointment of Florida State diehards, but also like still a good job. I think the energy is with Florida State. I think the momentum is with Florida State. And as much as you want to call it, what was it? A bi-something solar system? Binary solar system with two bright shining suns. I think you can say that in terms of brand recognition and, 10, 12 years of results. But right now, I would say that if you were to anonymously ask every head coach in the conference, they're most gunning for Florida State. And not a Florida State Clemson answer.
Clemson, though, is, you're doing a little bit of disrespect to Clemson by not throwing the Clemson Tigers out there.
Am I?
Clemson, I think so. I understand why you'd put Florida State. I do tend to look at this a little bit more through the lens of returning production, and Florida State gets absolutely crushed.
Totally.
Now, talent acquisition has not been a problem for Mike Norvell. He's actually proven quite good at it. But there's so much leaving that I'm not going to say we're going to see another like Orange Bowl situation at Florida State. I think they'll be fine. I think obviously, they're going to win their fair share of games this year, but I have a hard time not giving Clemson the nod, knowing what Florida State's going to have to backfill and what Clemson has coming back.
But what is it about Clemson that you feel like there is just a tonnage of radiation emanating from this program in the way that there is from our solar system's sun?
Yeah, I think there's enough continuity on offense that I feel good about on the Clemson side.
What is the continuity that you feel good about?
I still go ahead.
You like Phil Maffa? Kate Klubnik?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
They don't have receivers. Maybe Matt Luke will improve this offensive line.
I get the skepticism. I've come full circle on.
Yeah,
I've come full circle on Clemson.
Okay. What does their schedule look like this year?
Georgia, first week of the year.
It's a good opener.
Not in the ACC, not ACC team. Outside of that, App State, NC State, Stanford, at Florida State, at Wake, Virginia, home against Louisville, at Virginia Tech, at Pitt, the Citadel, and South Carolina.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm going to have to see something from like this roster outside of clear NFL players on defense to get me excited about like 10-11 win possibility.
We could sit here and argue until we're blue in the face over which teams are the alpha, essentially, in the ACC. Who are the teams? Who are the proverbial moons that
could blot out the powers or the power?
Because there's a Louisville conversation to be had.
Mm-hmm.
I think there might be more on the sleeper side, an NC State discussion to be had. We both seem to be abnormally high on Kyron Drones of Virginia Tech this year.
Yeah.
We want to talk about sleepers. I mean, you've been singing the praises of the Stanford Cardinal here ever since they joined the ACC. You did it again. So maybe they're your sleeper. I don't want to speak for you.
A little SMU action. Yeah.
A little Preston Stone. Why not? I mean, if you're thinking next rung down teams that could take some of the shine off of those top dogs, is it Louisville? Is that the next obvious one?
I don't know. I'm going to have to see where they go at quarterback long term. I'm not there yet with Louisville. I think that might have been a really nice year one, a sort of fortunate year one given the schedule. I might be inclined to ride with Brent Key and Georgia Tech here for this answer.
Ooh.
Again, I'm not saying that they are going to become the son of the ACC. I'm saying just in terms of blot out potential. That like I'm not going to sing the praises of like an Atlanta recruiting base. It's not the same situation. Like it's a difficult school to get into. There's too many schools around there that recruit Georgia and Atlanta Metro so well. But there is something about a team that plays with the fire that Georgia Tech has played with recently that they're going to win some 27-24s that they shouldn't. They're going to finish strong. I like year one of Haynes King. A little sloppy with the ball, but playmaker in ways that I didn't anticipate. That in terms of the true spirit of a moon blotter, a moon that is blotting. By the way, I cannot wait to get a number of emails that have the subject, quick science note about the moon.
Need a little primer for Dan Rubenstein.
Quick science correction.
Solidverbal
at 31:18, Dan mentioned the tides. So there is the spirit of a school occupying a place to blot out the lights of others. I think Georgia could be like the spoiler maker, that kind of school within the ACC moving forward that like, yeah, they only won 8 games, but man, they're getting in a lot of people's way.
Georgia
really
Tech,
often.
yeah.
Georgia Tech, excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we have commented before on the pain in the acidness of Georgia Tech. That's a specific science term that I used. They play hard for Brent Key. They did ever since he was the interim.
Sure.
And Haynes King, I think, is a super interesting prospect. You know, we got to see
not an NFL prospect, just like
an NFL prospect.
College football this season kind of situation. Yeah.
Exactly. They are extremely plucky. And as a team that could serve as that thorn, maybe more of a temporary eclipse.
Sure.
I could see it. Longer term, I think the arc here still favors Florida State Clemson, but in the short term.
And no Miami in this conversation?
I don't know what to expect from Miami, Dan. I don't know what to expect from Miami. I really don't.
I expect growth. I do.
I expect growth, but to what end? You know, we've expected growth each of the last 2 years. And I feel like in both instances, maybe there has been a little bit of growth, but it has far underwhelmed. And so I don't want to get too high on the Canes this year. I think longer term, Mario's very good at assembling talent.
Sure.
And the obvious question is, can he translate that into wins? And we just, we didn't see it. We saw a loss in the bowl game to Rutgers last year. Whatever. Who cares?
So
about the
in a
pinstripe
universe in which Florida State and Clemson are sucked into that black hole, who do you think has the strength to stabilize the ACC at the top? If it's not Miami, is what I'm getting from your words. Does this become an NC State conference? Does this become a Brent Pry, Virginia Tech conference?
No, I'd be inclined to go Louisville.
You think Louisville would have that shine?
I'd be inclined to go Louisville in that situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we're not talking Florida State, if we're not talking Clemson,
healthy NIL backing. Yeah.
Healthy NIL backing. It's a program that is willing to invest in the football team. They've got a good coach who last season alone proved that he can assemble the pieces pretty quickly and turn in a good year. I think I would be inclined to go Team Jeff Brom for this guy right here.
I wouldn't do that. I don't think I have that in me. Put my vote down. 1 vote for Dan and the Franimal at Syracuse, occupying that. No,
Let's go down to the SEC then.
All right, SEC.
SEC, the obvious one's Georgia. Yeah,
Georgia's the obvious son, especially. I mean, look, it was obviously a two sun system with Nick Saban present in Tuscaloosa, but with the absence of Nick Saban, it'd be impossible to say, this college football conference universe revolves around Tuscaloosa. No, it's Georgia.
So who's coming for Alabama? Who's coming for Georgia? Who's going to block out that son of that Kirby Smart son, that red son? Who's blocking that out?
In terms of what they've proven at their school already, right now, I'd lean LSU. The LSU ceiling, the Brian Kelly winning the West in year 1 ceiling, where recruiting is, I would think that's the school that can build a roster consistently and build the energy consistently to not just blot out, but have the chance to usurp Georgia. That's the closest to me in this moment, without seeing what Kalen DeBoer Alabama fully looks like, without seeing how Texas and Oklahoma adjust, knowing what the current, what we perceive the ceiling for a school like Ole Miss to be, or Tennessee to be. I think LSU kind of stands alone as the obvious answer. What do you think?
Well, we need to bear in mind that the SEC is bigger now.
Right.
Much the way the Big Ten, and we included Oregon, Ohio State, even Michigan into that conversation. I mean, Texas now comes in from the West. Texas was a playoff team a year ago.
For sure.
So maybe doing a bit of disrespect to the Longhorns, not considering them.
They were a Big 12 playoff team.
As one of the sons here. But yeah, they were coming from a different conference. We don't know how they'll fare against an SEC schedule, so I think it's probably premature to put them up there. I mean, Texas to me seems like the obvious one, given where that program's at. Sark is trying to build it in a very Saban-esque kind of way. And
they all are.
They all are, but Sark's got the firsthand experience.
Yeah.
As does Kirby Smart. Right.
Sure.
That's one thing that they have in common. So that's why I think I go there next if I'm thinking in terms of, all right, who's sort of like the next team up? If there's going to be anybody that takes off the shine from Georgia, who is that team? If not Alabama.
You would put Texas ahead of LSU in this moment?
I think I would, yeah.
Oh, man. I totally disagree. Okay.
I think I would, because they have gotten very, very physical on the defensive side of the ball. That's been a big deal. And that, I think, above all else, we've talked a lot about the talent they've got on offense, and Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning and whoever else. But truly, defensively, that is where they have made some serious strides. That's what enabled them to kind of take that next step forward. And that's not to say that LSU won't get there. They've certainly got a boatload of talent. But LSU didn't play any defense last year. If it was a matter of offense, then it would have been a different conversation. But you got to play both sides of the ball if you want to win in the SEC. And Texas did that. Texas did that last year.
Well,
different schedule, I get it, but
I mean, even with you get lit up a little bit by Josh Hoover. I don't know if we can fully make that claim. Previously on Texas football, it was Michael Penix destroying this team. Yeah.
Okay, that's all fair. Did they or did they not get better on defense last year?
They definitely did.
That's why my answer is Texas.
Okay. I just think LSU is always going to be closer to improving things for whatever reason. I think so Texas has Arch Manning as quarterback of the future, and LSU has the 2025 number one quarterback, Bryce Underwood. Committed. So they're both in what we think terrific shape moving forward at quarterback. Like there's a ton of promise on offense. Both schools should be able to recruit a ton of defense. I don't know. I think there's just still going to be an adjustment period for Texas in moving to a new conference, whereas I think LSU is better fitted in the short term. Better equipped in the short term to be that moon. Otherwise, look, there have been moments of Tennessee, there have been moments, a few years ago now of Florida. Like it's a little bit difficult to say Ole Miss because previously on Ole Miss Georgia, 52 for Georgia, 17 for Ole Miss. Like got to believe it a little bit more. Ole Miss certainly fits that like dark horse moon. Like they're definitely improving. The roster has definitely gotten better since the end of last season, but there's a 35-point gap right now that I just am a little bit concerned about. So my interesting answer is actually Oklahoma more so than Texas for like the next tier down after LSU. I want defense. And Oklahoma's been recruiting the hell out of defense, just stacking dudes in the recruiting, the last couple recruiting classes. Brent
Defense
Venables
got better last year. It did.
Both sides of the ball got better last year.
After all of the Ted Roof jokes from 2022.
Oklahoma has taken steps in the right direction, not as dramatically as Sark in Texas. If Jackson Arnold works out, if like the line of succession at quarterback, to me, the big question, in the short term is probably offensive line for Oklahoma and figuring out playmakers on offense, which offensive line, not an issue for Texas, but they are replacing some playmakers at Texas. Right. But there is that combination, that tantalizing, like Oklahoma could get to a scary good place on defense in the next year. I think, depending on how these guys work out, obviously. But I think the general roster level on defense is getting to a really interesting place. And you got to protect Jackson Arnold. You got to find guys to step into those roles. Absolutely. And they've brought in some good receivers. But Oklahoma, to me, because of the Venables factor, because of how I think he's going to stack players on defense, that to me is what I have my eye on. I don't know.
About Texas A&M?
Interesting, but like we haven't seen any of Elko.
Well, we have, though. Not at A&M.
Not as the A&M head coach.
But, I think this is a guy throughout his career who, when he's running a defense, he's getting the most out of that talent.
Sure.
He was much sought after. That's why A&M paid him a boatload to come and leave Notre Dame and go down to College Station. He was good as a defensive coordinator. He was very, very impactful.
Yeah.
In his short time at Duke, got the most out of that roster.
Totally.
Was able to build a good defense out of that roster and didn't have like a third of the talent that he's going to have at Texas A&M. Now, we can't necessarily project forward that all of that stuff, all of that pixie dust is going to come with him now to College Station as the head coach. But it stands to reason, at least in the short term, there is a fair amount back on that roster. There's a lot leaving, but there's a lot of returning production that is still in place in College Station, be it from the roster that was there before or some of the guys that have decided to transfer to A&M. So, I don't think this is like a complete rebuild type situation.
No, but like this is a classic April conversation.
Oh yeah.
How does Texas A&M get to that place? Are they on their way to that place? I see them getting to that place where, for whatever reasons, they never do. And so, at least for a stretch of time. And so Texas A&M is almost in its own category of sure, but okay. That's the issue with Texas A&M, that they occupy that very specific space of sure, potential's there, but no matter who they hire, no matter who the quarterback is, no matter what the identity is, things go wrong for 3.5 weeks plus every year.
Who is the star of the Big 12?
It's a great question. I actually went back and forth on this a lot. I think the only true answer to this question is Oklahoma State.
Second nationally in returning production, or excuse me, fourth nationally in returning production, but second in the Big 12 behind Iowa State. So they're up there, top 10 team in terms of returning production, 15th on offense, 14th on defense. I am probably not the best person to talk about Oklahoma State.
No, just remove yourself from your view last year. And if you evaluate where Oklahoma State more often than not is with Mike Gundy, who's by far the most tenured Big 12 coach. Obviously, Kyle Whittingham has been at Utah for a long time. He has not coached a Big 12 game yet. So within that conference, he has the tenure. He has the level of success. And even if you were to compare him against somebody like Chris Kleiman in Kansas State, like Oklahoma State recently has played very favorably against Kansas State over the past 5-6 years.
Why would you not go Utah, though? Why would you not say Utah? Because Utah's been steady Eddie.
Sure.
Under Kyle Whittingham. Now they get Cam Rising back. We don't know what he's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can assume it's just going to be the Cam Rising from 3 years ago.
Yeah.
At this point, right? He had a serious set of injuries he was dealing with. But generally, Utah plays defense and they do enough offensively to beat your brains in. And going into a new conference, the Big 12, I mean, that was part of our offseason discussion from a few weeks ago. Are they not the best team in the conference already?
Look, their program might be in a healthier place right now than Oklahoma State, but I think we still have to put some respect on Mike Gundy and this program's name. Like, there was nothing expected of them last year. They make it to the conference championship game. I think there's a certain amount of like Gundy and the Cowboys have proven it against this collection of teams. Well, more often than not, this collection of teams, whereas Utah is in a terrific place as a program with Kyle Whittingham. Like, they're down a quarterback. They're down 2 quarterbacks last year. They're still going to USC and winning, right? They're still doing a lot of great things. I think they beat ASU 55-3 in November, like with not much healthy on that roster. And so Utah's a great program. Utah has a great coach. But in terms of the sun this conference revolves around, I don't know. You got to play a game in this conference before I fully label you that title. Again, I might be higher on Utah than any other team in this conference in the short term, but we still got to put some respect in Stillwater.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Oklahoma State, if you look at the schedule, it's pretty much front loaded.
Okay,
it's front loaded in that they've got Utah and K-State on back-to-back weeks at the end of September. After that, though, Dan,
it's great.
West Virginia at home, then a bye. At BYU, at Baylor, home against Arizona State, on the road at TCU, home against Texas Tech, on the road at Colorado. Of the teams that, at least right now, we're doing this early April, are projected to be ranked, there's only 2, and they're back-to-back weeks. It's Utah, it's Kansas State, again, to close out the month of September. This is a favorable schedule. It's a favorable schedule, and for a team that's got a lot back, that's pretty good.
It's a potentially tricky November, right? If we have a good Jaden Rashada, if we have an improved TCU on the road, that's going to be difficult. Texas Tech, we'll see how feisty they are, but they ran the ball really well at the end of last year. Colorado on the road at altitude, we'll see. Shedeur should be protected better than he was this year. I think that's a tricky November, but this is to your point, no bedlam on the schedule.
There's no bedlam. No, there's no bedlam. And if we want to talk about true eclipse situations, I don't know if this is a lunar eclipse setup, but it very much has been Oklahoma getting in the way of Oklahoma State over Mike Gundy's tenure. There have been moments, of course, but by and large, Oklahoma has ruled that roost.
So would you say Utah is then if I'm going to put words in your mouth, the obvious eclipse candidate as they come in? If we're going to agree that at least Oklahoma State in this conference, of the teams that have played in this conference, I think, is it a Kansas State eclipse? Is it a TCU bounce back eclipse? Is it an upcoming ASU eclipse? Is it watch out for Gus Malzahn and Florida talent out east eclipse? Like, that's the thing. When you don't have that super obvious sun, then you got a lot of moons floating around.
A lot of moons, yeah. I'm most interested in Kansas and Kansas State.
Yeah, Kansas absolutely include the Jayhawks here.
Kansas and Kansas State. I say Kansas State because I think Chris Kleiman's got the track record. You just sort of know that he's going to put a good team out there.
But not against Gundy.
Not against Gundy.
Yeah.
And Kansas is interesting. The defense needs to improve if we're going to seriously consider them as part of this conversation.
Definitely.
At the top rung of the conference at all. But they've certainly got enough offense in the short term to make life hell for some of these other teams that are in the conference. I was looking at Kansas's schedule earlier. And I mean, the first month and a half of the season, they've got a team on their schedule called the Lindenwood Lions, which is a real team.
Great. I have no idea where that is.
Illinois, UNLV, West Virginia, TCU, Arizona State. That's the first month and a half of the season. After that, it gets a little trickier. Houston on the road at K-State for the Sunflower game. Iowa State at BYU, Colorado at Baylor. Extremely workable schedule for Kansas.
Good thing about this concept, by the way, is the process of mooning is also like thumbing your nose at the powers that be. I would say right now, just in terms of the ceilings, and I think this conference has 5 to 6 moons.
This is for my money.
You can talk me into a whole bunch of 9-3 squads.
For my money, I'm going to make a statement here.
Yeah.
This is the most interesting conference in America in 2024.
Basketball or football?
Football.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What do I know about basketball?
I don't know. I just know that
damn thing about basketball.
They're like playing at Rucker Park or whatever.
Yeah, I don't care about that. From a football standpoint, this is the most interesting conference in America.
Okay.
And at this point, look, we've evolved to the point now where all of the conferences that are still in existence have expanded. Right? Every single one of them, whether it's the ACC, the Big 10, the SEC, the Big 12, all the power conferences have expanded at this point.
Yeah.
So to some extent, like we're looking at newcomers and what they bring to the conference. But I think by virtue of some of the subtractions in the Big 12 with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, there's a huge void now all of a sudden. And to your point, there are 1,000 moons, 1,000 other teams in there that I think we could talk ourselves into, whether it's K-State or Kansas or even in Arizona, with what they've got returning.
I agree. That was disrespectful for us to leave off a team that features probably one of the best 3, if not best, quarterback to receiver tandems in the country. Yeah.
So, of course, Jed Fish leaves, but Brent Brennan's a good coach in his own right. And, with some of the returning talent on hand in Arizona, that's another team that I think is interesting. Arizona State will improve this coming season. Might not block out the sun,
right?
But will improve on some level. Colorado, you're right, should protect Shador a little bit better than they have
right
last season.
Yeah, they're still not going to be great, but yeah, they should be more intriguing.
Great, but there's just so many points of intrigue in the Big 12 that I've
so what
always
was
been interested in that
you
conference.
Said the most interesting, the most intriguing, the most what is the descriptor here?
Most interesting conference in America is the Big 12.
I'm not there because I still think you need like the clear top rung as a measuring stick. And in my mind, the top rung is real fluid within the conference.
Does that not make it more interesting for you, though?
It might be the most entertaining. I don't know if it's the most interesting.
I could go with entertaining too.
I don't know what the exact difference is. It's more entertaining because week to week you don't exactly know what you're going to get. But I like what we're going into the season in the Big 10 and probably less so in the ACC, but the Big 10 and SEC with where like the tiers can be argued a little bit more cleanly than you can in the Big 12. I think it makes for more week to week entertainment, but I don't know if that makes me more interested in the depth of this conference more. I don't know.
There's a pretty good chance that 2 teams from this conference are going to be in the playoff this year.
Okay.
Right? Because figure at least 3 from the SEC and the Big 10, 6. Probably 2 from the ACC. That takes you up to 8. We know there's going to be 1 from the non-power level.
Yep.
And that leaves you with 3, and you can kind of mix and match with, where those teams come from. But I think we can assume at least 2 come from the Big 12. Which 2? That makes it incredibly entertaining, incredibly interesting from week to week because it's so wide open.
Right.
You know, whoever wins the conference is going to get in, and then there's probably a team behind them. So which two teams those are going to be remains to be seen.
Sure.
But it's going to be fun as hell.
Yeah.
Who do we want to close out with? We've done the power conferences so far. We've obviously done the Mountain West.
Yeah. You want to do the American? You want to do the Sun Belt? Where do you want to go?
I want to talk about the Sun Belt a little
Let's
bit.
go Sun Belt.
I'm super interested in
a lot of changes.
A lot of changes. The Sun Belt, to me, we've called them the Fun Belt. Everyone else has called them the Fun Belt too.
Yeah.
The James Madison storyline over the last year was so much fun. And part of me is worried that it's just going to bottom out now because Curt Cignetti's left. Now, this has been a program that's been pretty good for a while. I mean, they made the decision. It was a conscious choice to go up to the FBS level. And they obviously acquitted themselves pretty well in the short term.
Wait, but which conference did JMU turn to fill that void? Would that be the Patriot League?
It'd be the Patriot
Would that be the gentleman from Holy Cross stepping in? Bob Chesney? Is that the name? Okay, yeah. Continue.
So, I mean, the James Madison storyline, I think, for me, is the most interesting. Full stop.
Okay.
But outside of them, look at App State. App State's been sort of the top dog for a while.
Sure.
You know, the one that we think of. Louisiana's been pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Troy loses its coach.
Forget Troy. They've got Jared Parker. I'm not even considering that. South Alabama loses their coach.
Yeah.
Kane
John
Womack,
Sumrall, Kane Womack, yeah.
Georgia Southern. Will Clay Helton action?
Sure. Yeah.
Like, who's the star of the Sun Belt?
I mean, they went
appropriately
3 and 5 in the Sun Belt last year. Georgia Southern, yeah.
Appropriately named Sun Belt. Who's the star?
The star is still probably JMU until proven otherwise. I mean, App State, given track record, obviously has to be in that conversation. I don't know if this is a binary solar system, but I know who my moon is. GJ Kinney and the Texas State Bobcats.
Oh, man, he stole it from me.
Come on.
I was setting it up, man. I was setting it up.
That's the up-and-comer.
Yeah.
That's the up-and-comer with Troy starting over, with South Alabama, the Jags, who've done a really nice job and I think occupied that space as being pretty dangerous these past few years. Young GJ.
Yeah.
And the Bobcats of Texas State.
Not very easy to say.
No, it is not. It is kind of a mouthful, a secret mouthful, which was what? That was the name of your debut album way back when. Yeah. A mixtape, technically. Yeah.
Bobcats, baby.
I think so.
I was intrigued by what they did in the portal last year.
Yeah.
And I was impressed at how quickly he was able to assemble the troops and put something out there that felt cohesive.
The TJ Finley experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I trust GJ Kinney at this point.
Yeah.
I think as year ones go, that was pretty impressive. And, you know, if you live and die by the portal, you're always going to get burnt at some point. And I think the portal is still a pretty big part of how he plans on building that system, whatever one comes next. But
I think, yes, the portal giveth and taketh away. But I think GJ Kinney might be looking at this as like giveth him a bridge to TCU.
Yeah.
Like,
no. Baylor will take GJ Kinney after another year like last year. Exactly.
So yeah, I'm in on Texas State as a team that's going to keep growing as a couple of these powers. I don't, starting over is a weird thing to say because Troy has been good for a few years now. So like, even if you're down on Jared Parker or whatever, like there's still dudes there. It's a really interesting conversation. A really interesting conference, excuse me.
So listen, with all that said, about an hour from now, what starts to happen, Dan, is the moon passes between the earth and the sun.
Let me write this down. I saw that there's a very specific path. We know people who are like driving to Indiana for like, because that's where like the very specific path near here is hitting.
Through like southern Indiana, it kind of worms its way up into a good chunk of Ohio. Erie takes out Erie and then goes across, I think, through the northeastern corridor up through Vermont,
right,
and such. So That is what happens. That is the I guess schematics of how this actually occurs. The moon then casts a shadow on the Earth, Dan, and that track that you just referenced, that's where that shadow is most prevalent.
Right.
So I don't know if you've got plans to go out there and see this.
I think it's hitting here in like, I mean, I guess there too or whatever, in like a half hour. What'd you say? An hour?
It's going to start up in about, a half hour. And then
I don't have the glasses. Do you have the glasses?
I do have the glasses.
Where did you pick them up? Like a supermarket or something?
My wonderful mother-in-law dropped them off.
Oh, nice. Look at you.
She found ones that were legit and not the knockoff type that you can buy online that might burn your eyes out. These are like legit ones that are to code.
My older son brought home a pair, so I'll probably look through his.
I mean, you got muscles, man. Take them.
Muscles?
You got more muscles than the kid. Just take the glasses.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm going to give him an opportunity
Assert your dominance. Assert your dominance.
How long does it pass in front? What is the time?
I think here it peaks around 3:30. I'm not sure about.
No, but like, is it like a 2-minute thing, a 30-minute thing? How long will the moon be in front?
You will see some portion of it for, maybe like 20, 30 minutes.
Okay. All right. So there's time for both of us to get some time in.
Absolutely.
Is this something that excites you? Is this something that gets you going as a space guy?
It is actually. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm into it.
But can you fully appreciate it with your like subpar vision?
Well, they say that when the eclipse occurs, reds and greens will look a little bit different
They'll
to
look
the human eye.
Right. You can't handle that.
To which I say they already look different for this guy. How much different could they look?
Did you look at a solar eclipse when you were a child, and did that alter things?
It could have
directly.
It could have. I mean, it happens every the last one was 2017. It happens every so often.
Was that solar or lunar?
No, it was solar.
Okay.
But we did not have quite the same pathway as we do
and this
now.
doesn't happen again for how many years? I think it's
21 years.
21 years.
Yeah.
So 2045?
Something like that. Yeah.
All right.
21 years.
Yeah. I'll look through my kids' glasses, get a good sense of it. I'm excited. I can appreciate it. It's a beautiful day here in the Midwest. I don't know how it is over
here.
There.
Yeah. It is here.
Great.
All right. Well, look, write in solidverbal@gmail.com. Let us know
Yes.
Let us know which moons are passing in front of which stars in your particular conference.
Do you have a favorite moon? Non-Earth division?
Oh, I'm a big Io guy. I've always been a big Io guy.
Is that Jupiter?
That's Jupiter,
Okay.
yeah. Very volcanically active.
Love that.
Yeah. Big Io guy. Always have been.
All right. Fair enough.
Poster on my wall of Io.
Is that true?
No, not at all.
Come on, Ty. All right. That's all I have.
Hit follow wherever it is you listen to this. We appreciate your support. Subscribe out on YouTube. Follow along on social media. We've been pushing pretty hard there as well. Appreciate your followership. Is that a word? Probably not. It is now.
That's fine.
For that guy over there, Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrand, thank you so much again for your support. We will talk to you all on Thursday. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.